Have you ever taken the time to stop and experiment with your scraps? Let's have a conversation about scraps today. Hi, I'm Roberta from Quilt Crafters Corner, and today I want to talk a little bit about fabric scraps. Now, we all have them. If this is something that you're interested in, if you could like the video, I would appreciate it. And also leave me a comment. What do you do with your scraps? Now, we received a very large donation of fabric, and this originally came from a fabric house out of Los Angeles. And we went up and got it, and because this went to a 501c corporation, it was a very large donation. And it was all mostly strips and scraps and things like that. There were some large pieces of fabric that we have since used, but we've dwindled down now to the last of the fabric scraps. So we had a lot of these, and I love the color and I love the fabric, and I wanted to find a way to use them. So they're about 1 inch to 1.5 inches wide. So there's still something there that I can work with. So we have these great scraps, and I'm thinking, okay, how can I use them? I want to use them in a different way. I don't want to do the same thing with them over and over again. We make a lot of crumb squares and things like that to incorporate into our quilts, but I like to use the strips just as they are. It gives a great dimension and a great added element to the quilt. So let's go over to my cutting table and let me show you what I did with those scraps.
Okay, so here we are, and these are the strips that I was telling you about. And as you can see, they are not very wide, but there's still some fabric there that I can use. So this is what I was experimenting with. And these are 6.5 inch blocks. There's 4 of them here, like this. And so I started putting strips together, trying to figure out how to make this work. How this would look best. Now my first experiment was with a little bit wider of these end strips. And they worked okay, but I didn't like the way the white and the center met there. I just think it looks kind of, it doesn't look real neat to me. So in effort to kind of minimize that, I cut them a little smaller, so that these points should meet a little bit nicer once I get these together. Now, the other nice thing about this is when you start playing with these, I mean, you can have them going in any direction. And once I put the blue on the corners here, you know, I could have those blue accents out here, and I could almost alternate this with this, and then maybe another go back to this one. It just depends on what you're looking for, what type of look you want to accomplish. But this will work too, just having them go to the outside like that. So let's talk a little bit about how I did this. The first thing I did is I needed to make sure that my strips on the diagonal were going to be the 9.25 inches that the diagonal is. If you were to measure this diagonal, you would get 9.25 inches. So that was my first consideration. I needed to make sure that I had enough strips put together in order to match that diagonal so that I could get it in there. So once I sewed my strips together, I've got them here, and these are just sewn together. And then I had to figure out, well, how big do I need to put on each side for this? So that's when I started playing with the measurements and finding out which what would work best and how I could do that. I believe I came up with the 2-inch strip on the top and bottom in order to accomplish this at a much smaller piece. So here are the strips. Now I cut this, once I've got those strips on, I cut this in half so I'll get 2 out of this. And so here's the strips, and just what I do is I line this up on my cutting board so I know my my diagonal, and then I just run my point from up there to down here on that, and then I just trim these off. Okay, and there's that one is ready to go. Now, these are 4.5-inch squares cut in half just for the side points on each side. So those will just get sewn on each side of them. And what I do is I kind of fold this in half and get my center and just do a little mark on each side of it, and then I'll fold my triangle in half and get that, so I can just match those up and I know that that's going to be centered. And I'll do the same with this one. And match those up. And that's ready to be sewn. So that can be sewn. Now I added the blue on this, and what I did is I just added it right on top of the white, and once again it's just I believe this is a 2-inch. Yeah, this is just a 2-inch block that I've got. And then what I've done is I've put it here on the edge and then just sewn it down and then trim this off and flip this over. And now you've got that little accent. Now I was thinking about changing the blue to something else, maybe more of a green color, which would be pretty too. I don't know, or maybe a darker blue. But this is just something that I'm experimenting with and going down the journey of experimenting with different options on this block.
So as you can see, this is a simple, easy way to use strips of your scraps up. It gives great dimension and direction to those quilt blocks. It also shows you what you can do with these colors and changing of your contrasts in your colors. I love these fabrics so much. I really wanted to put them together to see how I could use them. Certain fabrics give your quilts great expression and great dimension, and especially ones that you have left over from a project or something that somebody just gave you thinking, oh, you could use these. So take these fabrics that you have and that you love and go, okay, how can I do something a little bit different? So start experimenting with maybe a different layout. Instead of rows and columns and things like that, try using more negative space and accentuate those scrappy blocks and kind of give it an element, more of a modern twist, and maybe something a little bit more freeing and not quite so defined in rows and columns and things like that, a layout like that. Use these scraps in a way that they will kind of accentuate your quilt. If this is something that you enjoy and you want me to talk more about scraps, leave me a comment. Let me know. I would really appreciate that. It also tells me this is something you're interested in and I can go deeper on this. Also, like this video and please subscribe if you haven't. It's free to do so. If you have scraps that you'd like to share what you do with them, I have a Facebook group called Quilters Swarm. Come over, join us. We have great fun. Until next time, keep quilting.